Thomas Sankara's wife, wrote a letter to Ibrahim Traoré. The pen trembled in Mariam Sankara's hand, its tip hovering above the blank page like a bird unsure where to land. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains of her modest home in Ouagadougou, casting delicate patterns over the desk where her husband, Thomas Sankara, had once drafted speeches that ignited a revolution. 37 years had passed since his assassination, but the weight of his absence still pressed against her chest, sharp and unrelenting. On the wall behind her hung a faded photograph of Thomas, frozen in time, his beret tilted defiantly, his eyes blazing with the fire of a man who believed a better world was possible. Earlier that week, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's young leader, had unveiled a bronze statue of Thomas in the heart of the city. Mariam had not attended the ceremony. She'd watched it alone on a grainy television screen, her hand clasped over her mouth as crowds chanted her husband's name. Now, she would break a silence she'd kept for decades. She would write to the captain. "Dear Captain Traoré, forgive an old woman her tears. When I heard of the monument you built for Thomas, I wept, not from sorrow, but from a gratitude I have no words to contain. For years I have lived as a ghost in my own country. They murdered my husband and tried to bury his legacy with him. They stripped his name from streets, burned his books, and called him a fool for daring to believe Burkina Faso could stand tall. But you, Captain, have unearthed him. You've dragged his memory out of the shadows and placed it where it belongs, in the light. I visited the statue yesterday at dawn, when the streets were empty. The artist captured him perfectly. The tilt of his chin, the calluses on his hands from planting trees, the creases around his eyes that appeared when he laughed. He laughed often, you know. The world forgets that." I pressed my palm to the cold bronze, and for a moment, it felt like touching him again. A group of school children arrived as I stood there. One boy, no older than 10, asked if I knew the president who fought for the poor. When I said I did, he hugged me. "Captain, that child was born 6 decades after Thomas's death. You've given him a hero." Thomas and I met in 1983, during the drought that turned our fields to dust. I was a teacher in a village near Ouagadougou, rationing chalk sticks and mending torn textbooks. He was a young army captain, storming through the countryside in a battered Renault, rallying farmers and laborers to rise up against the rot of corruption. The day he walked into my classroom, his boots caked in red earth, I scolded him for interrupting my lesson. He grinned and said, "Education is the only interruption worth having." He asked my students what they dreamed of. "A full belly," whispered a girl in the front row. "A tractor," said a boy missing 2 front teeth. Thomas turned to me. "And you, madame? What do you dream of?" I gestured to the cracked blackboard. "A country where these children don't have to dream of food." He proposed to me 3 weeks later. Our wedding was a quiet affair, a bowl of millet porridge shared with comrades, a vow to fight side by side. For 4 years, we did. Thomas renamed our nation Burkina Faso, Land of the Upright People. He sold the government's fleet of Mercedes-Benz cars, declaring, "We cannot ride in luxury while our people walk barefoot." He vaccinated millions against measles and meningitis, planted 10 million trees to hold back the desert, and handed me the microphone at rallies to speak about girls' education. "The revolution needs their voices," he told me. At night, after our sons were asleep, we'd sit on the porch of our small concrete home, drinking bitter tea and arguing about Marx, Mozart, and whether mangoes were truly the king of fruits. But on October 15, 1987, the revolution died with him. He'd just returned from a meeting with cotton farmers. Our boys, Philippe and Auguste, were chasing lizards in the courtyard. Thomas scooped them up, kissed their heads, and promised to take them fishing that weekend. "We'll finish the irrigation project next week," he told me, squeezing my hand. I didn't know those would be his last words. The gunmen came at midnight, 12 of them, their faces hidden, their rifles glinting in the moonlight. I heard the shouts first, "Traitor! Down with the puppet!" Then the gunfire. I shoved the boys into a closet, pressing my body against the door as bullets tore through our home. When the silence came, it was worse than the noise. They left his body in the courtyard, riddled with holes. The newspapers called it a tragic accident. The new regime erased his name from history. For years, I hid. Friends disappeared. Strangers spat at me in the market. My sons grew up flinching at the sound of motorcycles, their only inheritance a father's ghost. When Philippe asked why they killed Thomas, I could only say, because he loved too much. Your statue is a seed. But your monument, Captain, has given me new words. Last week I took my grandchildren to see it. Auguste's daughter, Amina, traced the inscription with her finger. Thomas Sankara, President of the Poor. She looked up at me and said, "Grandma, I want to be like him." For the first time since 1987, I felt hope crack open inside me. Do you know what happens at the statue each day? Women leave bundles of millet at its base, a debt repaid, they say. School teachers bring their students to recite his speeches. Old men in faded military uniforms salute and whisper, "We're still here, brother." And the young, the young. They paint his face on murals, blast his quotes on social media, and wear T-shirts declaring, "Sankara lives." You've done more than honor Thomas, Captain. You've planted his ideas in a new generation. But I must speak plainly. The snakes that killed my husband still slither in the grass. They wear suits now, not uniforms. They sit in air-conditioned offices and foreign embassies, coiling around anyone who threatens their power. They will call you a fool for spending resources on monuments instead of mines. They will whisper that Sankara's ghost is a threat. Captain, you remind me of Thomas in his early days. Idealistic, impatient, burning with the need to fix everything at once. Let me share a lesson he learned too late. Revolutions are not won with grand gestures alone. They are won in classrooms where girls learn to read, in clinics where mothers survive childbirth, in fields where farmers own their land. Build these quietly, and the people will build the rest. When Thomas was a boy, his village was invaded by locusts. The sky turned black as wings blotted out the sun. The elders wailed as the insects devoured their crops. But Thomas's father handed him a sack and said, "Start collecting." Locusts are food too. That night, the villagers roasted the insects over open fires, laughing as they ate. "Hunger is a liar," Thomas's father told him. "It makes us forget we hold the solution in our hands. Captain, you've shown Burkina Faso how to roast locusts. In a world that tells us we are poor, weak, and forgotten, you've held up a mirror and said, 'Look at your strength.' My hands ache as I write this, but my heart is light. Philippe is now a doctor in Senegal, healing children Thomas never lived to see. Auguste teaches history in a sun-baked classroom here in Ouagadougou. When I sent them photos of your statue, they called me, weeping. 'Mama,' Auguste said, 'does this mean we can say his name aloud now?' 'Yes, my son. Thanks to Captain Traoré, we can say it, shout it, sing it. Captain, I do not know you, but I see my husband's spirit in your eyes. Protect it, nurture it, and when the weight of leadership crushes your shoulders, remember this. An old woman in Ouagadougou lights a candle for you each night, praying you outlive the bullets. With all the hope I have left, Mariam Sankara." 3 days later, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood alone before the Sankara statue, Mariam's letter clutched in his hand. The moon hung low, bathing the bronze figure in silver light. Around him, the city hummed. A street vendor fried plantains nearby. A group of teenagers debated politics under a neon sign. A mother sang a lullaby to her child. He read the letter again, tracing the smudged ink where Mariam's tears had fallen. In his pocket was a photo of his own mother, who'd sold peanuts on these streets to pay his school fees. She died the year Traoré joined the army. Her hands cracked from decades of labor. "Make them see us," she'd told him on her deathbed. He hadn't understood then. Now, standing before Sankara's unyielding gaze, he did. That night, in the cramped office where Thomas Sankara once plotted a revolution, Traoré wrote his reply on a sheet of military stationery. "Madame Sankara, your letter crossed the desert and found me. I am no Thomas Sankara. I lack his brilliance, his courage. I am just a soldier who grew up hearing stories of the president who gave his salary to orphans. But your words are a map. I will follow them, not to build monuments, but to finish what he started. The irrigation project he promised? We broke ground last week. The girls' schools you fought for? They will have new roofs by the rainy season. You asked me to protect his memory. I will do better. I will make his memory unnecessary. Your son, Ibrahim." The next morning, as workers repaved a potholed road near the statue, a teenage girl paused to watch. Her name was Fatima. She sold phone credits to tourists, but dreamed of being an engineer. In her backpack was a tattered copy of Thomas Sankara Speaks, bought from a street vendor for 500 CFA francs. She didn't know it yet, but in 10 years, she'd designed Burkina Faso's first solar-powered hospital. Above her, Sankara's bronze fist pointed toward the horizon. Somewhere, Mariam Sankara smiled.